Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Days That Changes podcast. I'm very excited today that I get to sit down and spend some time with a good friend of mine, Dan Van Drunen. Drunen, right?
Drunen.
Drunen. He literally just told me how to say it too. I'm butchering it already. Here we go. But I'm very excited to have you here. And we've shared many, many memories together, many struggles together through challenging moments. And I find you a very inspirational friend and human being. So my hope for today is just being able to have a very honest, genuine conversation with you, and for you to share the moments that you've noticed impactful change, and whether that's through kind of resilience, whether that's through maybe even, as we'll get to, an upcoming big life change chapter that's on the horizon for you. I think you have a lot of great knowledge to share with other men, particularly around going through challenge, uh, coming out on the other side of that with a renewed sense of self, and connection to life and connection to yourself, which I think is really important. So, yeah, really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jer. Good to be here,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. So I'd love to maybe just dive right into it, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I'd love to maybe just talk about something very exciting for you that's on the horizon. If you want to share that, about, if we consider the kind of aspect of the days that change us, those are also potentially days in the future that are upcoming that are going to really change one's life. Um, and I'm not going to share that story. That's for you. So I'll pass it over to you. And I'd love to hear, uh, what's this upcoming chapter that you have in life?
Well, there's going to be a day in sometime in July where my partner Karina and I are going to be having a little baby boy. So stepping into fatherhood, I'm super stoked and excited for it. And that's the big, the one emotion that just keeps coming up for me is just excitement. And really, I'm feeling ready for fatherhood. I'm excited about it. Um, Super stoked to have a little boy. Thought we were going to have a girl, and so did she. So it was a bit of a surprise when we got the news. And I think my journey to fatherhood's been an interesting one, Jer. I
Hmm.
think I've shared with you in the past where a previous relationship where we were trying to have kids when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and we're struggling, going to fertility clinics for 3 years, where after 3 years of trying, I came to the sort of the acceptance that I wasn't going to be a dad. I was with someone who couldn't have kids. So, really, over like between then and now, I mean, there's been, a come and gone from relationships, uh, two specifically, and then now here we are where we've got a little boy on the way, and I'm just super excited and super happy to be sharing this journey with Karina. I know she's going to be an amazing mom, and I'm confident I'm going to be an awesome dad too.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm so excited for the both of you. Um, in this upcoming chapter, and I think that's a testament to, that concept of being a really good father is often one that shows up for a lot of us guys too, of how we experienced fatherhood growing up, right? Maybe even how we thought of ourselves, even in those, let's say, kind of 20s, early 30s, of like, what kind of father would I be during that time of my life? And um, maybe, if you're so stepping into this chapter now for you, after all that kind of adversity of going through fertility clinics in that previous relationship, um, I can imagine you kind of battled too with that thought of, yeah, am I going to be a father one day or not? Um, so where did that shift for you now? Because I can imagine there's a moment there for you where you're like, maybe I'm not maybe giving up on the aspect of being a father, but now coming into this relationship with Karina, now you're going to be a father, right? So that kind of journey from your mid 20s of being like, maybe I need to kind of give up on this aspect of I'm going to be a father, to now maybe take us through that kind of
Yeah, yeah.
journey.
Coming out of those years of trying and not succeeding, I really came to a place of acceptance and
Hmm.
just understanding, okay, these are the cards I've been dealt, and I need to be okay with that. Otherwise, I'm going to beat myself up. And that was years where I was just at a place of acceptance that I'm like, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, I'm okay with that too. Sort of very neutral feeling. And when Karina and I met, um, we had both done a lot of personal work for ourselves. And, the conversations we were having were very transparent, honest, progressive, and just like, where are you at? What do you want? And, and, you know, are we a good fit? And these just kept having these conversations. And, one of these topics that came up was she wanted kids. And I was like, in a previous life, I was wanting them too. And this is where I'm at. I'm at a place of acceptance that I, wouldn't have kids.
Hmm.
And, now I'm with someone who wants them. And, I was able to revisit those feelings of like, is this something I really want? And ask myself those questions, be honest with myself. Okay. I don't want to, I want to make sure that I'm being honest coming into this, especially I'm turning 47 this year. So it's like, is this the right time? Is this, is it too late? Is it, all these questions started coming up for me. Right.
Hmm.
And, realizing and coming to the realization that I'm like, yeah, I really do want at least one, and I'm ready for it. I'm ready to, like, if I look back at the versions of myself through those, previous two relationships, I look at that, I give that man grace, but like, wow, he wasn't ready to be a father. Like
Hmm.
he didn't know who he was yet, right? And after 5-6 years of really digging into myself and figuring a lot of things out and learning a lot of lessons, tough lessons, I can honestly say that I am ready and I want it. And this is a really really exciting chapter for me, fatherhood. And
Hmm.
so it's going from to sort of circle around, moving from wanting but not really knowing what it was. Like in my late 20s, I was still a boy.
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of that was the people pleaser in me with going, with my ex partner, and she really wanted kids. I'm like, okay, well then that's what we're gonna do, right? And there was part of me that was just going with the flow and being the nice guy. Um, and then moving to a place where I really thought about, what do I actually want? How do I want to live my life? Who do I want to be with? Can I see this person as the mother of my child? And um, now we're having a baby, because all of those things aligned, and we chose to do this together. And it was
Hmm.
something we both wanted, and we wanted it with each other too, which was a great way to do it.
Yes. Yeah, and that's such a great point. Like the intentionality around it, rather than it feeling like it's just doing something maybe to appease your partner
Yeah.
or to kind of maintain the relationship too, I think is a really important point in that, right? Like I really hear the intentional aspect of it. Like it sounds like there's a part of you too that's really come to terms with like, yeah, like regardless of age, it's like I feel like I am ready for this. I feel like this is something that I want to step into rather than
Hmm.
I could step into and who knows,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
You heard that right. Like that's where I used to be, was okay, I could step into it, but now it's very much I want to.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that choice I think is a really important thing because then it's going to translate into you, I imagine, showing up in a totally different way as a father, right? When you bring that intentionality into it. I can imagine too, if you think about other aspects of your life where you're intentional about it, you're showing up much differently than if it's just something that you're going with the flow on, right?
for sure.
Um, what do you think is different for that for you? Like in terms of where you are now in life compared to even like late 20s, early 30s? Um, obviously that you haven't experienced fatherhood yet because it's coming up in in the summer, right? But I'm curious, like, what do you think is going to be different for you? Like, how do you want to show up? I guess that's a question that I'm curious about, right? Because I think it's a lot of us that think of that as men, like how will we show up as fathers, right?
Hmm.
And maybe we don't truly know that until the day it's there, until the baby is literally in our arms or we're seeing the baby. But I'm curious for you, like how do you want to show up as a father, and maybe how like what shaped that for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's on my mind a lot. Um, I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of where my journey has taken me for the past 5 or 6 years, where I really started being more introspective and figuring out who I was and digging into my mother and my father wounds and my relationship with my dad and a relationship with my mom and how that's molded my personality in certain ways, how it programmed me, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. And I think about how, and no fault of my parents. I mean, we're all doing the best with what we have. But learning just through my own experience and realizing that these wounds that I carried into adulthood that that created me and molded me into who I was and how I was showing up. Um, I changed a lot of those over the last few years, and um, as I step into fatherhood, the the primary reason why I say I'm ready for it is because I have been able to change a lot of the things that I didn't like about myself, or the way I was showing up, or my level of integrity in certain situations, for example. So when I think about being a dad to a little boy or a little girl, I want them to see me as someone of high integrity, honesty, um, someone they can depend on, somebody who supports them, somebody who is their biggest cheerleader and talks them through things. Their safe space. So the things, some of those things I had as a child, and some of those things I didn't, and I just want to make sure that I can, as long as I'm doing my best to provide, I think those things, those are super important to me to bring to parenthood. Um, I know there's going to be stumbles. I know there's going to be mistakes. I know there's going to be more growth even from now. So I think just being, again, going back to the intentionality of trying to be there and trying to be present and bring those qualities and competencies to parenthood are that's all I can really do. And just, I mean, it's going to be an ever changing landscape, from 6 months to 9 months to 3, 5, 10 years old, right? So um, I have experience with kids, and they change and they change so fast too. So
Hmm.
I'm going to need to be able to be adaptable to that as well, and um, and give grace to both myself, my partner, and our little one.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great word, grace. Patience, I think, is something that kind of stands out in that as well, right? Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I think those are really like powerful points in terms of we don't. I don't think there's any let's say reason maybe isn't the right word, but we can often look at our childhood and see maybe the faults of our parents that occurred, right? Um, and to your point, it's good for us to keep in mind that they're trying the best they can with what they know or what they have access to. And I think what you've been sharing too is like, that now it's your responsibility to heal that for yourself, right? We can't just sit and blame and think that something's going to change in that way, right? So you
Yeah,
really kind of like woke up to that idea of I need to take responsibility for my own life, right? How I'm showing up, right? As well. So I think that's a really important part because then that translates right into how you are stepping into this new chapter of fatherhood, right? Like, right, this is my responsibility of how I'm showing up, right? And it's going to be, having a ripple effect into your relationship and also into your uh, dynamic with your child too, right? So thanks for sharing that. So I'm
yeah.
excited again for you guys. I'm just, yeah, I get hit with a pang of joy for the both of you and for your growing family.
Appreciate you.
I know you've done a lot of work within like the men's work community. Um, has there been anything in your experience in those circles or in those groups that have really stood out to you in terms of, let's say, the aspect of taking responsibility for your life, for your actions? Does anything stand out for you in that?
Yeah, I mean, when it was right around COVID that I decided, I was really struggling with my work, with my relationship. I was feeling anxiety for the first time in my life in my early, I was 40 years old, and I was like, what's this thing inside me that I've never felt before? And something felt really off, and I know I needed to change something. I was on a trajectory where I was spiraling down. I had to take time off work. I was burnt out. And one of the guys, one of my friends at the time, told me he was in this thing called a men's group or a men's circle, and it really helped him. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. And this is right during like the beginning of the pandemic where they moved these circle. They used to be in person, and then they moved them to Zoom and online. And so I jumped on a Zoom call with a group of guys, and I only knew one of them from real life in person, and the rest of them were kind of, we're all Canadian, but spread across the country and time zones. And we started talking about stuff that guys don't typically talk about, between guys. And I I showed up to these meetings weekly. It was, a couple hours once a week. And after 3 months of attending these meetings, I realized that I wasn't showing up. I was on the call, but I wasn't there. I wasn't
Mhm.
I wasn't being truthful. I wasn't being honest to myself. And if I wasn't being honest to myself in that call, I wasn't being honest to the guys on the call. I'll give you some examples where like, okay, we would do an hour to an hour and a half of some questions and sharing and whatnot, and then we would take a break. And on the break, I would grab a beer and put it in a cup that they couldn't see I was drinking beer.
Mhm.
Or I would even, take a break and take a quick hit off a joint and just come back to the second half of the meeting. And I wasn't there, like I wasn't present. And I was I felt like, okay, I'm showing up, I'm going through the paces. And even my words, even when I wasn't, drinking beer or smoking weed, I wasn't being completely honest, right? So after 3 months, I sat there and I told the guys I had something to share, and I told them I wasn't being honest, and I wasn't being present, and I wasn't showing up fully, and I committed and I promised to start showing up fully, and I did. I kept my word. I kept my commitments. When I said I was going to do something at the end of the meeting and come back next week, I had it done, whether that was a workout or a conversation or something hard that was, I was procrastinating on. And when I was there, I was listening. I was listening to the guys. I was sharing my experiences. I was being honest. And that that piece of being honest to myself is the day that changed me. Like when I finally decided to start being honest with myself, um, things got initially hard because there's a lot of hard stuff that I need to start facing instead of just pushing it to the side or ignoring it or putting up the blinders, right? And I knew I needed to start being honest with myself because again, if I wasn't being honest with myself, I wasn't honest with anyone around me, my partners, my friends, my family, whatever that was. So that's that started me on the journey of like really digging into things and going into sometimes some dark places of like why do I do these things? Why do I lie sometimes to protect myself? Why do I protect myself? Why do I feel like I need to protect myself? So like these things that I started working through, I was able to. It took time. It took a lot of time. Some things took years to figure out,
Hmm.
and a lot of that stuff did sort of lead me down that path of the wounds that I had been carrying, mother wound, father wound, other stuff, etc. Past relationships, trauma, etc. And it really was that day that I decided to like stand up and be honest with those guys in that meeting. Um, my journey through like men's work transformed, evolved. I even got, after a few years of feeling like I could lead myself, I got into taking more leadership trainings and learning how to run a circle, how to hold space for another man, how to have those tough conversations,
Hmm.
and really share the the deep stuff that guys often struggle to share with each other in confidence. And then being that confidant that when someone did share their story with me, that it didn't leave. Like I was a vault for that, right? So um, that journey of attending meetings, going to events, taking the initiative to train myself to um, essentially become a man. I was a boy up until the 6 years ago. I still see myself as the way I was acting was um, not the way I would want to lead someone.
Hmm.
And I was at work, I was leading people, but um, it's like that explanation of like when you go to like if you're in a dating scene, be the person you want to date, have the qualities that you want to see and feel from someone else. And I wasn't doing that to just everyone in my life, so I needed to start doing that. And it was that day that I finally like decided to stop lying to myself, that my life slowly started to make take steps in the better direction.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that journey. Some things stand out is the first off piece of like being honest with ourselves. I think there's often a lot of blocks around that, around truly being honest, admitting to ourselves that whether it's our behavior um, isn't being aligned with our values, or maybe we're not being in integrity, right? And we create these protective strategies of staying in that way and convince ourselves of that, right? So that I think another thing that you mentioned there that I think is really important for a lot of guys to um, take in there is that it took time, right? Like I think on one end of that is okay, you had no problem doing it at work, because I think for a lot of us guys at work, there's a performative aspect to it where it's like we're not being seen at work. It's not truly about us. So I don't mind leading, right? I can lead in that because it's like performative, right?
Hmm.
But outside of that, in relationships or friendship dynamics, or even just with how we are interacting with the world around us, that performative aspect doesn't exist really there. We can try to be performative, but it's not who we are, right? Um, and it takes time. I think a lot of us guys, though, struggle with the time. right? Because again, it
Yeah,
ties back into the performance, right? We want it to like, because there's discomfort, just like as you've explained, there's discomfort in what comes up and what you, what comes up to the surface, what you're facing. It brings levels of discomfort that sometimes make you just want to be like, nope, that I don't, I'd rather not,
yeah,
right?
discomfort with no results too, right? So
Uh-huh.
when you going to the time aspect, I think we as men like to see results. We do,
Hmm.
put something in, you get something out. But this journey of self awareness takes time, and you don't get the results instantaneously or soon after. And from the moment you have new awareness on something, like let's say I found new awareness around, oh, you know what? I just realized, you know, my dad never told me he was proud of me. Wow. What does that mean? I don't know. It took me years to figure out and get to the bottom of like going through different phases of my dad never told me he's proud of me. Oh, you know what? There's moments in my life where I seek validation.
Hmm.
There's moments in my life where I feel unseen. There's moments in my life, and it could be different parts, and like just trying to like weave this web of what's going on and experiences that I've had in my life from something that happened as a child, and um, coming out the other end of like, okay, understanding, okay, my dad had a really hard time verbalizing love. That's not how he showed love. He showed love through, in another way. He loved giving gifts. He's the best gift giver in the world, but verbalizing it, difficulty there. And, going through those phases of accepting that, realizing it's not his fault, understanding that we all give and receive love in different ways. And then that's just like one string of one
Hmm.
thread of my journey that took years for me to come to and accept that, okay, my dad's a great gift giver and I love him for that. And when he gives me something, that's because he's saying, Dan, I love you, or Dan,
Hmm.
I'm proud of you, or whatever that is, that whatever that thing is, right? So the time it took for me to figure that out, that was probably 2 to 3 years here. Like that, and
Yeah.
I was like, what is this thing, and why do I feel this? And like I have this awareness, but figuring it out took time, and it sometimes it was hard, and then other times I was able, like, you know what, it'll show itself when the time is right. And I maybe there's something else that I need to learn, something else that I need to become aware of that can start making this make more sense.
Yeah. That's a great point too. Like just recognizing that process is not linear,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes we still need to learn more through upcoming experiences, right? You might not be done learning that aspect either, right? Even though it happened in childhood, it's like how it's still unfolding for us. And I think the awareness piece is the really important part. You know, to have a lot of awareness is important. It's the first step of it,
Yeah.
right? But then it's like, okay, now there's this discomfort of, okay, I'm aware, but maybe nothing's changing. And that can be really frustrating for us,
Oh yeah.
right?
I felt like that was the hardest phase to go through. I have all this new awareness, didn't know what to do with it. I had no
Hmm.
tools. I had no, I had old coping mechanisms. I had,
Hmm.
whether that was like to have a drink or to play a video game instead of being able to sit and meditate. Those are new tools that I had, or, self-soothing, being able to breathe, like stuff
Hmm.
that I hadn't learned yet. So like the awareness came and I was like, whoa, I felt like I just got hit by a Mack truck.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was an interesting phase. And now that I have, I've got like the Batman, the tool belt that I can, I find new awareness today. I have so many different ways to deal with it, and to synthesize it and to turn it into, whether it's a lesson or something else. So
Hmm. I wonder too, is like, that the time between like awareness and then awareness and different behavior change, there's often like we're sitting with some really hard, like emotional experiences too, right? And, it's in that of like, okay, you get really familiar with like, what are you feeling? Because again, we're not rushing to just like distract ourselves. We're not rushing to, soothe ourselves, right? I guess even with your breath, you're still bringing like that awareness, but like present awareness into your body. What am I experiencing? Bringing language to it of, right, I'm feeling maybe grief related to my upbringing that's being kind of triggered right now. But all that requires you to really sit with it, right? And if you don't, I mean, you try to just like jump right over it, you really don't experience that change, right?
Yeah.
It's almost
And
like
I,
hijacked.
yeah, one component of like going to these men's groups and events that really helped me was in that phase of awareness, and it felt like the cloud of or the fog of war, where like you can't really see what's past this fog. Going to these events and just hearing other men's experiences, and while their experience is obviously very different than mine, just being able to witness it and try to feel what they're feeling, or have a feeling that's coming up, that's maybe there's something being triggered inside of me, and getting used to feeling more often. I feel like that helped me. It gave me the capacity to start feeling my own stuff easier, because I wasn't as afraid to go there. I wasn't as, like these, you know, um, one of the exercises I did early on with a coach was when I was trying to describe what anxiety was for the first time. He's like, okay, close your eyes. Where is it? Where do you feel in your body? Is it moving? How big is it? What color is it? Does it have does it have a color, or does it have a shape? And is it moving? And what direction is it heading in? And like being able to like really focus in on a feeling in my body and put a name to it. And um, the more you do that, it's like a muscle. You exercise it, and you understand, okay, as soon as I get that feeling again, I know what it is.
Hmm.
So by being in those circles and feeling what I'm feeling through someone else's story, it was like a muscle that I was working. And it may have taken me some time to like really um, get it to a point where it started to make sense, but it was easier as time went on. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, for sure, yeah. I was following along with you there, and I think that also speaks to maybe building your capacity to like relate to other men in that experience too, right? The empathy piece,
Yeah.
right? Like listening, like truly listening to another man's story about or his struggles, and really being there with him and getting it,
Yeah.
and I think that's really helpful for us guys too, right? Especially I can only imagine in those men's circles too, of you probably have many guys in like different parts of their path in that circle. So you actually, I wonder because it's online too, right? So I wonder how that changes things too, right?
Well,
Did you
I
find
did
things
different
change?
things online, and
Yeah,
both in person and
and in
online.
person, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's a different dynamic,
yeah,
but um, yeah, I've just the in-person stuff is a lot more, can be a lot more intense.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And just bringing it back to the point that you made there too, of the more familiar you become with it, the less you want to run from it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's like a form of desensitization, right?
Yeah, and like you probably feel more control over it too because it's like you give it more language, more understanding, and it's like right, like this is anxiety, and I'm feeling anxious maybe because I have a upcoming meeting or something, or maybe I'm going on a date, or these sorts of things where it's like right, this
Yeah.
is natural for me to feel this way, right? I don't have to run
Yeah.
from it. I don't have to protect myself from it. It's not going to actually hurt me, right? So
But
that.
also having the awareness to like when feelings like that are constant and not going away, the ability to put up the flag for yourself, saying, okay, this is more survival
Mhm,
than normal, right? And then being
mhm,
able to take the steps to say, okay, I need to get myself out of this
mhm.
this circle or whatever that was causing this constant feeling that was causing yeah, like a prolonged, whether it's anxiety or moving into like more of like a survival state, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, again, you develop the kind of, I guess, the pattern of knowing what you need in these circumstances, right? So again, it's like you become more resourced for yourself.
Yeah,
Then again, like all these, and I think this is a really important part too. I think a lot of guys get caught up on feeling like whatever's happened to us in the past, we need to forget about it. We need to kind of cut it out of our life. Um, Even some of these kind of protective strategies, like cut it out, like get it, get it out of me. But really, those kind of strategies too also provided you this landscape of becoming who you are today,
yeah,
right? So it's like we can still carry those with us into our life, but now we just recognize, maybe they can take on a different role in our life, or maybe we can still utilize them. They're still important, right? But again, it's just that, coming back to the Batman tool belt, right? Is that, instead of it being the only tool on the tool belt, now you have many that you can choose from, right? And the activities maybe that were on, that were composed in that survival strategy is not necessarily like negative per se, right? Um, it depends, right? Like at the same time, if we found ourselves going to alcohol a lot to like cope, yeah, maybe it's like maybe we just change that dynamic with alcohol, right? The relationship we have with alcohol at the same time,
yeah,
right? Like why are we turning to have a drink right now, right? And that comes from that piece of awareness. So it's not necessarily like, alcohol is evil because it showed up in that way for you, right? But that it's like, right, I can just redefine this relationship as I continue this path of growth for me, right? And maybe that relationship is, I don't want it in my life anymore, right? So that can also be part of that too, right? So it's, but I think we're really quick to label things like good, bad, negative, and we want to get rid of all of the negative, right? And think that that's really evil.
yeah. I think one key for me was realizing the parts of me that I struggled with eventually became my strengths. Some of them,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So like the parts that I struggled with, let's say I was in a relationship where someone had a hard time taking accountability. That's a strength of mine now. Like I'm
Hmm.
taking more accountability than I ever have before in my life because I saw what being on the receiving end of not giving it feels like.
Hmm.
Being on the receiving end of, you know, not being told my dad's proud of me. My little boy is going to be is going to be hearing that like
Hmm.
more often than he might want to. So like turning those things that maybe hurt in the past
Hmm.
into a strength, and it's just heightened awareness that I bring into my life and the people in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I think that's a really great point too, is like seeing those pains as strengths, right? They are again things that shaped you into who you are, as this wonderful human being, right? So it's like we carry those with just, it's almost like we're carrying a younger version of ourselves, like on our shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we're showing it, the world around us with joy and compassion, right? Maybe I do have one more question for you, um, that I think is probably pretty, aligned with your upcoming changes in life here, and I'll make it relatable to that change. So, I guess a curiosity of mine, and I'm sure this maybe changes over time for you, but if you were to share or show through actions to your son something that's really important, what would you want to share with him? What would you want to make him realize about you, but also about life?
I think what's sort of top of mind for me with my future son is bringing him up in a way that um, he can show up into the world, teaching him to show up into the world with high integrity, respect, and being a critical thinker. And, you know, I want to instill values that, um, you know, I want him to respect his mother. I want him to respect the people around him and understand that the world doesn't revolve each of us, like we are part of this world. And I think, you know, showing up and just teaching those core values that are important to me, like high integrity, being accountable. Your word is, you know, your reputation, like those qualities. Um, but also, you know, coming into this world, we're coming. I'm bringing a little one into this world during it's crazy times right now, and I'm aware that, you know, that 10, 20 years down the road, things are going to look very different than they do today, and even, you know, from 20 years ago, right? So, um, bringing him up in a way that he has the ability and the capacity to like make some really good decisions for himself, that are well thought out, can go through life without blinders on, and just see like just to be that critical thinker, like don't trust, verify is something that I live by. Like, okay, I can hear tons of sources on tons of different things, but
Mhm.
um, I like to verify for myself and then make
Mhm.
a judgment, make, you know, good judgment based on that. So I think that's obviously going to come later, you know, when comprehension is at a higher level. But
Mhm.
you know, starting from trying to instill good values from the start by being that example, because you know
Mhm.
the first 5 years of a child's life, they are literally a human sponge absorbing language, their visuals, everything. So um, I know I'm going to make mistakes, but I think that um, those are the things that are sort of top of mind for me, and I hope I can accomplish that. And I know it's probably going to evolve over time, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think that's a really important point to give yourself grace is that, there's no perfection here, right? Um, I can only imagine too with parenting, right? There's no perfection there, right? So just giving yourself the grace to maybe even model that to, your son too, right? Is what I'm hearing is like through integrity is like, right, if I make a mistake, I'm owning it and
yeah,
I am stepping into the repair of that, right? Rather than maybe how we've witnessed in the past in our upbringing, maybe it just got swept under the rug or maybe it didn't get acknowledged or these sorts of things, right? So that
yeah,
modeling, I think, is a really powerful tool for anybody, but I can, especially for a parent, right? Like for the little sponge that is going to be, soon to be, crawling around and then running around, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, Dan, and thanks for taking some time out of your day to share with myself and everyone who's listening. Uh, some of those really helpful bits of information and also your journey, because I think it's been a really impactful journey. I know there's so much more there, so maybe down the road we'll have to get you back on again, because I think you have just a wealth of knowledge around men's work, men connecting with other men, how to show up as a very integral man as well, and that journey through that, right? So
Sounds good, Jer. I just wanted to wrap things up by thanking you for having me on. I've always loved talking to you about this stuff, and I've been really excited for you and your journey and listening to your podcast. So when you invited me on, I was super stoked, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. I know we have many memories of, I have many memories of the Sunshine Coast trails, the grueling hike, multiple hikes, I guess, actually, too, where, we're in the trenches together through
Yeah,
those
we learned a
times. Yeah.
lot about each other over those many miles of
Yeah.
vertical and distance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Dan. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Jared. Cheers.